This morning. Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the February 1st, 2021 regular meeting of the Harnett County Board of Commissioners, meeting for the first time in the Harnett County Resource Center and Library. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Matt Nickel to do our Pledge of Allegiance and our invocation. Commissioner Nickel.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for another beautiful day. We thank you for the many blessings that you have bestowed on us each day. We ask you that you bless this new building and use it as a place to incubate our county's future. Lord, bless this board and give us the guidance in the decisions that we make. And Lord, I ask you to bless this county and the United States of America. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. This time we will consider any additions or deletions to the published agenda.
There are none.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. And we will move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion. We accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Commissioner Nickel made a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Do I hear a second?
Weatherspoon. Second. That was Commissioner Weatherspoon.
What did I call him this time, Nickel?
Yeah, you called me now.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy, Mr. Nickel. Starting off royally this morning. My excuse last time was that it was a night meeting, so I guess it doesn't make any difference. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, appointments. Commissioner Weatherspoon, I believe you have those.
Yes, sir, I do. I move that we appoint Zachary Smith, representing District 5 as an alternate member on the Board of Adjustment. That we appoint Angela McCauley to replace John Hare on the Harnett County Cemetery Board of Trustees, and that we appoint Marvin Wayne Towney to the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee. And that is a motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherspoon. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Nickel, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And there was a question about the consent agenda. We did get that voted in and approved, didn't we?
We
Commissioner
didn't approve the
motion,
agenda.
Ms. McCoy second, and it was 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I think we still need to approve the agenda itself.
The agenda, pardon me.
And I make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherspoon. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion to approve the agenda passes. Pardon me, thanks for keeping me on target this morning. Item 6, discuss the Harnett County fiscal year 2020-21 legislative priorities.
Brian Haney, Assistant County Manager, will be calling in to talk to you about this. And Brian, if you're there, go ahead.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
We hear you. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I am bringing the legislative priorities back before you for additional discussion. Following the board's last discussion on January 12th at the work session, I provided a draft list of the priorities for board prioritization. During that process, Vice Chairman Weatherspoon suggested adding some additional priorities to the list and possibly presenting those to the county's legislative delegation as the board's top priorities. He suggested 8 priorities which were divided into 5 categories. Those are economic development, broadband, Harnett Regional Jetport, transportation, and education. 3 of the 8 are already on the list that you had before you, and 5 are new. And I believe you should have a hard copy of the proposed additions in front of you. Because the legislative luncheon, which was originally scheduled for today, has been postponed, we have some additional time to discuss these priorities and how you would like to present them. So with that, I will turn it over to Vice Chairman Weatherspoon to discuss his proposed priorities, and then I'm available for any comments, questions, suggestions, or direction from the board regarding your priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Haney.
Mr. Haney. Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes, sir. I proposed that we approach our legislative delegation for help with economic development, to assist us in economic development with marketing efforts. They're in Raleigh every day. They know before we do the possibility of new business coming to North Carolina, and I'm asking them to make sure that they put us in the forefront when those discussions begin. Also, I'm asking for assistance from the state in the creation of new and additional industrial parks and sites within the county for economic development. That's something that we're sorely missing. We need to figure out a way to not only acquire the land and have the land for economic development sites, but also to provide the infrastructure and that's needed. The next item is broadband. I think it goes without saying that that's a top priority and will remain a top priority for the county, both for our school children who are remote learning because of the pandemic, but also because of this is a key element in economic development and attracting new business. If we don't have adequate broadband or any broadband, then companies probably are not going, they're probably going to disqualify us because of that. The Harnett County Regional Jetport, I'm asking the legislative delegation to assist us in expanding and enhancing the Jetport. That includes a new terminal, expansion of the runway, and trying to decide if and where do we need a second runway. The runway we have right now is 5,000 feet, is 75 feet wide. We need 100 or 125-foot wide runway. I think there's probably state grants that could help us do that, and federal grants from the FAA and Department of Defense. And we need 5,000 feet. While you can land on it, it restricts the amount of passengers and the amount of fuel that the aircraft can have in order to take off. That's why we need to look at something in the range of 5,700 feet for length. Next is transportation. I think it goes without saying, one of the things that we've been talking about for years is the need for a 4-lane highway into Wake County, and that remains a priority. We have the Highway 55 bypass around Anger. That needs to move forward as quickly as possible. I know Anger's pushing for an eastern bypass, which is sorely needed. That would basically put a loop all the way around Anger. Another area that I feel is extremely necessary is the expansion and upgrade of Old Stage Road leading up to I-540. That would alleviate a lot of traffic coming through the municipalities, especially Anger and Highway 55. Another thing that is sorely needed is a bypass around Dunn. Right now, it takes forever to get through the city of Dunn. It's not their fault, it's just what it is. And we need to work and have the legislators push to get us a bypass to go around Dunn so that we can access I-95 in a more timely manner. Also, we need to work with Campo, DOT, and the legislators to push for a Highway 401 expansion from Lillington into Fuquay. That would give us a second 4-lane road and would open up the possibility of some industrial parks and industrial business in that part of the county. And last, on transportation, certainly not least, is work with Campo to expand their coverage area to include the town of Lillington as well as the airport. This would be a big benefit to Harnett County in that when it comes to aviation dollars, I think the only competition we'd have in District 6 is, I believe, Elizabethtown. And so that would give us a way to get additional funding from the state for improvements at the airport also. And last but certainly not least is increased lottery payouts to the counties. And by that I mean when the lottery was originally set up, 40% of the proceeds of the lottery were supposed to go to the schools. That's been robbed and cut back, and I'm not sure what the percentage is now, but it's way below 40%. We need to push our legislators and work with them to get that 40% reinstated. And not only that, but we also need to talk with them about and work with them on the $10 million grant that Harnett County got. A lot of other counties got it. Well, in this time of uncertainty, if we come in below $2 million in a given year, then we forfeit our lottery proceeds. But if those lottery proceeds were to come in at $3 million, we need to get that extra million, or $500,000, or whatever the number might be. I just use that as an example. So those are the legislative priorities that I propose that we look at and consider in addition to the ones that Mr. Haney had previously presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Weatherspoon. You answered my question with your last statement there, so I wanted to make sure that some of these other priorities that we discussed earlier were still a part of the plan. So I understand you have selected what you felt were the priorities and categorized them in these 4 categories, and I appreciate your efforts on that. Any questions for Mr. Witherspoon on what he has presented this morning? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner McCoy?
I would like for him to further explain the last one on the education. Since the board voted not to receive the lottery funds for the next 5 years. So could you explain what you're doing here?
Yes, ma'am, I'd be glad to. We did vote to forfeit the lottery funds for 5 years if it's less than $2 million a year. That's what the $10 million grant would average over a 5-year period. However, if the legislature increases the lottery percentage back to 40%, there's a chance that it would come in more than $2 million in a year. And all we're saying is, okay, if it comes in at more than $2 million a year, give us that difference. Right now, we would not get that difference. But we're saying, hey, we want that. We're asking for our cake and eat it too also.
Oh, okay, I got you then. I didn't understand that, but thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I got a question also.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson here. Mr. Weatherspoon, we support bypass around Dunn. Could you talk to us about what impact that would have on the economy of Dunn to take traffic that purchases food and gas, et cetera, out of Dunn, take it around Dunn?
Well, that's always one of the first questions that comes up. Actually, I don't think it would have a major impact on the downtown business. It would make it easier for people that want to go downtown Dunn. They would have less congestion to put up with, and it would be easier to move around in downtown Dunn if somebody wants to shop or go to a restaurant or something like that. For those people that just want to go around Dunn and get to 95, that's where a bypass would come in, and that would be who would be primarily the users of the bypass.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions this morning?
And Commissioner Johnson, I will say that when we were working on the bypass in Andrews, that was one of the first things that came up was, oh, you're going to dry up the downtown. No, if you look at towns that have bypasses, typically they flourish rather than dry up and go away.
Well, I know that 421 is a major artery in and through Dunn.
Right.
Yeah, just, you know, my initial reaction is you take a lot of the traffic out of Dunn and bypass it. The little mom and pop stores, the commercials, gas stations, food, restaurants. They won't be a service to those people coming through the town anymore. So it just, you know, my initial question was, it's going to make an impact economy of the city. Just to get people
It's
to go
definitely
around.
something that would need to be looked at.
I appreciate your answer.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions this morning regarding the proposed change that Mr. Weatherspoon has presented?
I got a question about the impact on a 4-lane highway in Wake County coming through the, Andrew, what, are you looking at 10 years?
I'm sorry. I didn't.
10 years to get the 4-lane highway through the Angier area? How long time are you looking at before you're looking for completion of these projects?
The last I talked with DOT, right-of-way acquisition is scheduled for July of this year. They have requested to move that up to March, but I don't know if that request has been approved. That would put it, construction, somewhere probably late 2022 or the first of 2023. And I think, if memory serves me correct, I believe they're saying it's a 2-year build on that bypass.
That's good.
So, you know, completion could be somewhere around 2025.
All right, that's good. I know some of these projects last for years and years.
That's correct. Ms. McCoy's got a question.
I'm sorry, Mr. McCoy, Commissioner McCoy?
Commissioner McCoy, I don't have a problem with the list, but I do see, I am concerned about how we list the priorities of the list, because my personal opinion is, if we move broadband up to second, I think getting broadband into this county is one of the most important things that we should be doing. And so I'm not asking for it to be taken off the list. All I'm asking for is that it be moved up to number 2.
Ms. McCoy, that's a great question. I did not intend for that to be the priority, the order of priority. I was just listing the 5 items, I guess as they came to my mind. But anyway, certainly schools, that probably shouldn't be the last priority. And so, you know, that probably needs moving up also. But I agree with you, broadband should be a very high priority. Actually, broadband could be included in economic development. Because it's critical for economic development, but it's also, we need it very badly for our school children that are remote learning.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So I guess the question would be, Commissioner Weatherspoon, you said that you really didn't list these 5 major topics, I guess, in any particular priority order. Is that something that that you think we should do before we move to accept these, or what's the feeling?
If it's the pleasure of the board, I think it would be appropriate to put a priority on these items.
Okay. So I believe Commissioner McCoy stated she felt like broadband should be the first priority. Is there any other thoughts on that? Is everyone okay with moving broadband to the top as far as these 5 categories?
Yeah.
Okay, I see a lot of heads nodding. And then economic development, would that then become number 2?
Yeah.
Then, as we look at the list as presented, Harnett Regional Jetport would be 3. Does that need to stay there, or does something else need to move to 3?
Well, I think all that falls under economic development, so I mean, that should be a one-liner.
Actually, you could take this whole first page and make it number 1.
Amen.
Maybe that's what we want to do.
Excuse me, Commissioner McCoy,
Yes, ma'am.
if we, I think maybe we should talk to Brian about expanding our number of priorities that we want to submit to the legislature. I don't know if it has to be 5. I want to know if it can be more than just 5. Is Brian still there?
Yes, ma'am. If I can say, I guess you've got a few options. Certainly, I think, the goal would be not to get rid of the additional priorities, but, our effort or our goal for the board was to prioritize, to show legislators these are the top priorities for the county, but that certainly doesn't mean that the other priorities are not also priorities. So certainly, you could include these additional priorities in your list and then prioritize, or you could present, I think what Vice Chairman Weatherspoon is suggesting, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that you would present the list he's provided as the top priorities, and then would include the rest of them, behind that on a list for the legislators. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Haney.
Okay.
And the reason we're trying to limit it or narrow it to 5 is I know some of the legislators, I've talked with them in the past, and actually they say, give us your top 3. Well, we don't have a top 3. We got a top 5, and so that's what we, but, if you give them a list of 10 or 12 items, they're probably not going to give the attention that we need. But if you give them 4 or 5, which is what we've attempted to do here, you stand a much better chance of getting their attention and getting them to work on these items.
since you made that statement, I was going to remind you afterwards that 5 was more than 3, but since you made that statement, you've already thrown it out there. But okay, so what we're talking about now is that we have all of these are priorities, but we have the 5 categories that you shared with us earlier, Mr. Witherspoon, as being our top priorities, and the others that we had worked on previously also being priorities as the opportunity becomes for the legislators to be able to help us with any and all of these items.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and also some of these items, for example, on the initial list presented by Mr. Haney, it included the 4-lane highway to Wake County. It included the Harnett Regional Jetport. One thing that's not on my list that would fall under economic development or would certainly benefit economic development is the natural gas capacity. So, you know, many of these run together and work, you know, make up one. You have 4 or 5 different items that might make up one item.
Understood. Thank you. So am I hearing that on our top priorities, that one-page sheet, we'll look into interchange, move broadband, the broadband group to the top, then economic development, leave the rest as is, and adopt these all together as a group? Is that where we're standing right now?
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Okay, do I hear a motion that we accept these legislative priorities with that one change that I just mentioned?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the legislative priorities with the change, moving broadband to number 1, economic development to number 2, as well as the legislative priorities previously submitted by Mr. Haney.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Do I hear a second?
Commissioner Johnson, I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion or any discussion on the motion? Okay, we will now vote. Commissioner Nick?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Haney. We appreciate your work on this. Commissioner Witherspoon, we appreciate your work and trying to narrow the scope down a little bit as well.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 7 on our agenda, Capital Improvement Program CIP discussion.
Right. This is Paula Stewart. I'll kick it off and then turn it over to Lisa McFadden. What you have before you today are we got some of your priorities from Friday. Lisa has ranked those. What we're asking for today is just if you have questions about anything that's on the proposed or the recommended CIP for 2022 through 2028, please ask the questions today. And if we don't have the answer, we'll get back to you. And then we're asking also for approval of this plan. And what will happen, if you approve the CIP, that still doesn't mean it's part of the budget yet. It just means you've approved that these projects are going to move forward. And then at budget time, we will actually allocate the funds for the certain ones during the budget process. So just so you know, this is just a CIP, a plan for us going forward for the projects that you feel should go forward. So I'll turn it over to Lisa.
So do you have any questions based on your rankings? And I know we're still waiting on a couple of them.
Do we have that as a hard copy, or is it on our?
No, I don't have all the results in yet.
Okay, so just for clarification, we are simply voting to approve the items that were included in the CIP plan. And then at some time in the future, we will look at those as far as how they rank from all of the input from the 5 commissioners.
Yes, and we'll take those considerations when we're working on the one in the fall for the next fiscal year. We'll make sure we prioritize based on the board's goals.
In order to clarify, this is the 2022 through 2028 CIP, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But we do have a couple of changes that once you approve, when you approve this, just know that there's an increase of Phase 1 for Patriots Park to $411,000 from the Parks Capital Reserve. And with the loss of the lottery funds, we're going to have to identify new funding sources for the camera upgrades and the door locks. And also reduce the school maintenance fund from $1.4 million to $400,000. Oh, no, yeah. The one that's on the screen is the previous year's approved capital project plan.
And folks were provided a correct copy, email, the Sunshine Police that you all provided, so I apologize for that.
And it's also on the county's webpage, is the recommended one.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Stewart or Ms. McFadden?
Commissioner McCoy, Lisa, can you name just a few of the top priorities?
I sure can. Let's see. Give me just a second, I'll pull that up. I can, out of memory real quick, mostly schools, the schools and the projects that we've already started on. I apologize, I was waiting on the results to come all in.
That's okay. Sorry.
Let's see. Okay, the projects that have to do with the Harnett Regional Jetport, Lafayette Elementary School renovations, the Johnsonville expansions, the Northwest Harnett Elementary School, the Detention Center and Security Intercom replacement, the Viper radio, the maintenance projects, the Solid Waste Northwest Convenience Center relocation, the Harnett County Schools cameras, upgrades, and electronic door locks. Like I said, the airport, the Jetport. And some of the lower end priorities. Are the ones that are a little bit more, a little further out, like the public library, the mobile outreach vehicle, the Parks and Recreation, Greenway, trail construction, capital reserves appropriation, Patriots Park Development Phase 2, the courthouse shell space upfit, Star Academy facility improvements. But we'll give you a hard copy once we get all the results in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the capital improvement program for 2022 to 2028?
I'll make a motion to approve the capital improvement program from 22 to 28.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Do I hear a second?
Commissioner McCoy, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, well, we'll hear none, we'll vote on this at this time. Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Witherspoon?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank y'all for that.
Yes, thank you, and thank Mr. McFadden, thank you, and Ms. Pascal for your work on this. Commissioners, thank you for taking the time to work through those and send in your priorities. I look forward to seeing the list once it gets compiled.
And just as a quick reminder, those of you board members that did not get the list back to us, we need it as soon as possible so we can get the results tallied. So just as a reminder.
Thank you. That brings us to item 8 on the agenda, discuss COVID-19 leave for county employees.
Yes, this, Chris Appel, our staff attorney, is going to pass out the revised policy for COVID-19 leave. As you know, the federal leave ended on December 30th of 2020, and that we are proposing to extend or create our own local leave for employees who are affected by COVID-19. So Chris is going to go over the policy with you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy.
Chris,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you so much for the list. But, can barely see print.
Oh, I know, I'm sorry, and that happens when I do the comments on the side. I'll go over the comments for you, but
Okay.
I know, I apologize, that's what happens when I do the track changes, it makes it smaller. But just to go back over what we talked about last time, the emergency paid sick leave and emergency FMLA expired effective January 1st of this year. The legislation that was passed in December did not extend either of those programs, and so beginning January 1st, if you have to be out for any kind of COVID-19 related reasons, you got to take accrued leave, sick, vacation, whatever it may be. So as we discussed the last meeting, we're looking at creating our own program that would essentially mirror the emergency paid sick leave. And so what I did is I took our current policy and essentially just changed out emergency paid sick leave with COVID-19 sick leave. I didn't want to call it the same thing because they need to be separate programs, but they can act the same. And so as of right now, the way it's written, it very closely mirrors the emergency paid sick leave, that it would offer 80 hours of additional sick leave for the reasons listed under 1 through 5. There was a number 6 under emergency paid sick leave, but it has no application. It has to do with additional laws that would be passed or some to that effect. It has nothing to do with what we would be trying to do, so that just needs to be eliminated. But one of the questions I did have, so under 1, 2, and 3 allows you to take COVID-19 sick leave if you're under a quarantine or isolation, if you've been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, or if you're experiencing symptoms and getting a test. That's the main purpose of this is if you're sick with COVID-19 or awaiting results is to be able to have some leave. Now under 4 and 5, this was under emergency paid sick leave, but I want to ask the commissioners whether you all want to grant it for these reasons as well. And so under 4, be caring for an individual who's under quarantine or isolation order. And then 5 is caring for an employee's child under age 18 if their school or daycare or childcare is unavailable due to COVID-19. So whether it's a school closure or if their care provider is sick, if it's at home kind of a thing. So I'll leave up to you all whether you want to include that. Now, under emergency paid sick leave, under number 4 and 5, an employee only gets paid 2/3 their rate. Under 1, 2, and 3, they get paid full. So there are various options. We could leave all 1 through 5 you want to. You could pay, if you want to pay full rate under 4 and 5, you can. Again, this is our option, but the way I wrote it is I just mirrored emergency paid sick leave. And so we just need to make a determination whether to include 4 and 5 and to keep it at 2/3 pay rate. That covers on page 1. So page 2, some of the comments I made are just depending on that decision whether to include 4 or 5, whether to delete out other portions. Also under emergency paid sick leave, under healthcare providers were exempt. We did allow healthcare providers to use 1, 2, and 3, so our EMS folks, health department, first responders, law enforcement, we allowed them to use under 1, 2, and 3. I left it that alone, allowing them, again, to use it under COVID-19 sick leave. Again, you can tell me otherwise, but I figured probably just leave that the same as well to allow all county employees, if they're sick with COVID-19, to use COVID-19 sick leave. Again, everything else is essentially left the same. Again, all those comments I have off to the side are just regarding, it would have to be, sections would have to be deleted if we didn't include reasons number 4 and 5 for taking the leave. At the bottom, I did put an expiration date of June 30th of 2021 unless further extended. I just put that because at the end of the fiscal year, it can be readdressed again by the board, reassess where we're at that time. I did add a caveat that if emergency paid sick leave or any other type of similar leave is passed by the federal or state government, that this program would immediately expire upon its effective date. Again, because the whole purpose of this COVID-19 sick leave is to provide that gap until such time that the federal government does something. My guess is they probably will at some point, but as of right now, we don't know. And so that's essentially the policy where we're at right now. Again, I just want feedback from you all to see, again, if you want to leave it, again, essentially the same as emergency paid sick leave, or address those issues as I mentioned under 4 and 5. Oh, and sorry, I also forgot to ask if you want to leave it available for part-time workers as well. Part-time workers earn it based on the number of hours that they work, so they don't get the full 80 hours. It's proportional to the amount of work they work. So if they're a 20-hour employee, they get 20 hours. So I'll open up to you all.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Commissioner McCoy?
Commissioner McCoy, you have intermittently, they can take the leave. I think that's appropriate, but do you have a time frame, hours or days, how many days? Or are you just leaving it open there?
Be able to take it intermittently? It's open, again, they have the max of 80 hours. Intermittently allows them, if you're able to telework, an employee wants to telework, then they don't have to take the full amount of time, and they can have time left over. I had COVID-19 and I took some time, but then also teleworked when I could, and so I didn't end up taking my full 80 hours. So it's just dependent on the employee and what kind of work schedule they do. If they're too sick to work, they're too sick to work. They can't work. They won't work intermittently.
Well, in other words, it's compatible to the family medical leave as far as intermittent.
Well, this COVID-19 sick leave is separate from FMLA. This program does not include emergency FMLA. We can't because we can't.
I'm not saying it includes it. I'm saying compatible as far as that one section of intermittently leave. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is it kind of works the same where you can take it intermittently like FMLA. Right, but it's obviously a completely separate program. It's not in any way related, but it works like FMLA where you can take it intermittently as you need it if you qualify under one of the 1 through 5.
Well, that's exactly what I'm asking.
Okay, sorry. My apologies.
And this is Paula Stewart. One other question we had was, do you want it retroactive back to January 1st, or do you want it to start now, or what's your pleasure on that?
Okay, and I'll just, we'll get to that, Mr. Stewart. Thank you for that. Let me just kind of go back just a moment to our previous discussion in the work session. I think, if I remember correctly, we have some departments that are already having some issues, specifically maybe in our sheriff's department with folks in the detention center who are becoming repeatedly exposed and are out of time to be able to take and are having to take leave without pay. So I think that's the issue that has brought this back to the table for us, and we certainly, I think, all shared at the work session that we did want to discuss that. So that's where we are today, and I just wanted to state that for the public that's listening this morning. I guess we'll take these questions that Chris had with the policy and work through those to see the board's thoughts and feelings on those. I guess Chris' first question was, do we want to open this up to part-time employees? If so, do we want to calculate the same way as we do for emergency paid sick leave? Any thoughts on that? Everybody okay with that? Moving that in? Hearing no discussion, we'll move on. Do we want to offer 4 and 5 in the list to qualify? Highlighted on your sheets, I believe.
Greg, again, under 4 would be you're caring for an individual, so you're not sick yourself, but you're caring for a family member who has COVID or who's forced to isolate. That's number 4. And then again, number 5 is if school or childcare is unavailable because either school shut down or your caretaker is COVID-19. So those are the 2 separate ones. So it's unrelated to the actual employee being sick, and that's why I wanted to ask the board whether you want to offer it for those 2 reasons.
This is Commissioner McCoy. I move that we include 4 and 5.
Any other comments on that? Okay. And if we, as Mr. McCoy said, including 4 and 5 eliminates a number of these other questions on the second page, but there are a couple of things here. Do we want to set a max? That would be a max as far as salary level, I'm assuming. There are probably only a few employees in the county that this might even come into play if I'm reading this correctly.
Correct. I think there's only a handful maybe that would earn more than that.
Okay.
For the most part, overwhelming would be covered under that maximum. Again, came out of emergency paid sick leave. And same thing for the part-timers. Again, it does have a max, and that would be paid at 2/3. Again, that's the other question too, is whether you want to leave that at 2/3 pay as compared to full pay.
Okay. Any thoughts on leaving the max as is stated in the policy? Everybody good with that? Okay, and then the end date of June 30th, unless it's extended. Is everybody good with that? That's bottom of the second page. Okay, and then back to the question, part-time question, 2/3 pay. That is how it's written now. Is that correct, Chris? And is everybody good with that?
Yes, and that they come from emergency paid sick leave. That's how it was paid out under that federal program.
Right. Okay. So as hearing no discussion, I am assuming that the board is good with the policy as presented. And then the other question we'd have is whether or not we're going to make this retroactive, and that would be back to January the 1st.
And Chairman Matthews, if I may, this is Paula Stewart again. We did run a few numbers for you, just so you would have some information. So 215 county employees used this leave in 2020 out of a workforce of around 1,100. I'm trying to get the pertinent information for you. So EMS workers, there were 28 that used the leave. Sheriff's Department, there were 70. Harnett Regional Water, there were 35. And then the other ones were in the other departments. So I just kind of wanted to give you a basis there. It was used a lot, and then a lot of people, 24 employees completely exhausted their leave because of COVID-19. 36 employees have less than 20 hours of leave remaining, and 19 employees have less than 10 hours remaining. So it did have a tremendous impact on our workforce.
And that was 2020 under the federal legislation.
Exactly, under the legislation that expired, correct.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll go back to a point Commissioner McCoy made at the work session, that these funds have already been budgeted.
Correct.
Correct, yes. Do I hear a comment on whether or not that if this passes, that it will be retroactive, or beginning, I guess, at adoption. Any thoughts? Yeah, I see a lot of heads nodding, so Chris, I think that we would say this would be retroactive to January 1st, 2021.
Okay.
So that's how we present it. Any other questions before I ask for a motion? Any other questions of explanation from the staff?
And Chairman, there's one other matter I just want to address. I kind of brought it up, but I just want to confirm. Again, under the federal program, 1 through 5, or the sick leave was not available at all to any first responders, healthcare providers. Again, we allowed it as an internal county thing to allow it for 1 through 3, not 4 and 5. Do we want to do the same thing for COVID-19 sick leave? Do we want to open it up altogether for any reason? Whole idea behind, I think, behind the federal legislation is these are frontline workers. They're essential. We need them here as much as possible. But we decided to open up because if they're sick, they're sick. There's nothing to do about that. But 4 and 5, we didn't because we're not talking about the employees themselves.
Thank you. Question about clarification for frontline workers. Any thoughts on that?
Commissioner McCoy again. Could you explain that last part of what you said?
So under the federal emergency paid sick leave, healthcare providers and frontline workers, so law enforcement as well, they are exempt under the law. So we did not have to offer emergency paid sick leave to any of those individuals. So our EMS, health department, law enforcement, we didn't have to offer any of that. However, the previous board voted to allow those workers to use emergency paid sick leave under reasons 1, 2, and 3, and that's if the employee is sick or isolated, quarantined, things of that nature. We did not open it up for reasons 4 and 5, which is caring for someone else who's in isolation or quarantine, or if their school or childcare is closed. We did not open it up for those reasons just because they are absolutely essential workers. It's not that we didn't care, but they're essential workers. They're out there. So as of right now, the way it's written, I left that alone to where COVID-19 sick leave would be available to those workers under 1, 2, and 3 if they're sick, but not under 4 and 5. But I wanted to allow the board to weigh in on that, of whether to keep that the same or to open up reasons 1 through 5 for every employee.
So if I understand correctly, then the federal legislation did not open this up to frontline workers.
They did not.
However, the decision of the former board was to open up reasons 1, 2, and 3 to our frontline workers, which we did up through December 31st of 2020.
Correct.
So the question is, and the way this is written, that continues the policy that we operated on up until that time, December 31st, 2020.
Correct.
Right. So the question you have for us is, do we want to continue that rather than go back to the way the federal legislation was written initially?
Correct.
Any thoughts on that, Commissioners?
Commissioner Nickel, I say that we extend it to those frontline workers. I mean, if for one, it should be for all. Plus, we need to take care of her here.
Commissioner Nickel, and when you say open it up, do you mean all reasons 1 through 5 or just 1, 2, and 3 like we've been doing?
1 through 5.
So for everything, okay.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Anyone else? Okay, so the suggestion was to, that this policy would be open to all county employees reasons 1 through 5, correct? Any further discussion on that or opposition to that? Okay, well, hearing none, if there are no further questions, then I will ask for a motion on the COVID-19 leave for county employees beginning on January 1st, 2021 and set to end on June 30th, 2021.
Commissioner Nickel, I make a motion that we approve
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Weatherspoon, I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Witherspoon. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Commissioner Nickel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Witherspoon?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you for that work, Chris. We appreciate that. Item 9, County Manager's Report. Ms. Stewart?
Yes, if you will indulge me, I want to kind of change the order on things just a little bit. Kimberly is going to talk about the Veterans Treatment Court financials for you in just a second, but first I want to talk about COVID-19 again. Last week, the Health Department, through their COVID line and their main line, had over 13,000 calls, so there is continuing to, and we know it's going to increase this week after the announcements we've made. So I wanted to give you a couple of announcements. So due to the lack of COVID-19 vaccine supply, the Health Department is not going to be doing any more first doses until we get our dosages back up. So right now, they're only doing second doses through the Health Department. Also, they're opening up the testing sites. The COVID-19 testing had been put on the back burner, but now the county Health Department has partnered with another agency, and they'll be doing testing behind the CCCC Health Sciences Center over at Brightwater this week, starting tomorrow. It'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and you should have a press release in your email box today about that. And we know that's going to, the lack of supply, we know we're going to have more calls come in, and we're still working with Harnett Health as well. So we're sharing vaccines, we're working together, so we're doing everything the state is telling us, but we just don't have the allocation that we need to vaccinate everybody as quickly as possible. So just everybody that's listening, please bear with us. It's really controlled. It comes from the federal government to the state and from the state to the county. So we can petition all we want, but there's a particular allocation they follow.
As Commissioner Weatherspoon, does that mean that someone that already has an appointment, like tomorrow?
If you already have an appointment, you're still on schedule. It's any new appointments. I should have made that clear.
Okay,
It's any new appointments for shot number 1. So if you already have an appointment, that's honored because that was taken into account, but these would be someone calling for their first shot under phases 1 and 2. So the 65 and older, essential worker, all that is still, they're not all vaccinated here in the county. So that's what we're concerned about. So if you have not gotten an appointment, another thing is if you'll just please, if you're the public, please, if you've already made a request, we are getting through those. We have lots of people doing callbacks. So if you've emailed, made a web request, if you've called in, you will be, your call or your email or your web request will be responded to. Just give everybody time because there's thousands, we're getting thousands of calls every day. So don't call again. And I mean, if you, of course, if it's been a long time, call again, but it's just making the phone lines that much more crowded when everybody's calling and they're putting in 2 and 3 and 4 requests, and then that's really skewing our numbers. So if you've already requested it, you will be honored. We just have to just, again, be patient with our staff on that.
Ms. Stewart, if I might ask for clarification on something that I heard that I want to make sure is accurate. I understand that it is the state that decides, the state tells us these vaccinations are for second dose only. Is that correct?
Correct. We do have second dose allocations separate from the first dose.
So that is a state decision, not a county decision.
That is correct.
Thank you.
So the next thing I have was the use of the AV equipment in our new board chambers. Since we're here today, we wanted to just briefly discuss going forward after today for board meetings, not work sessions, but for board meetings like we're having today. I've asked Ira Hall, he's here, to talk about what we could do. Since we have the cameras, you can see, we have the monitors now. If you want to start streaming video as well as audio, that's just something we want to find out today.
So I'll just start off with a couple of overview things in this room that we've got now. A lot of things are similar to what we used to have, just better, and we prepared for them. So this room was designed for certain things. The first thing I think all of you noticed is the screen sitting in front of you. Everybody has their own individual screen, especially after COVID is over and everybody can sit where they should be sitting. You'll have your own individual screen in front of you. That will be controlled by the clerk of what's being put up there. So it's just for you guys to be able to see it without having to look to the side or behind you or in an awkward position. So those screens are just for you guys to be able to see whatever's going on, whether it's a presentation from somebody standing here or whether it's the board agenda like you're seeing now. Those monitors are for that, and the two in the back are for the audience view. Along with that, there's two monitors out front that we can set up for overflow. And so if there's a large meeting or something going on, people could stand out there and watch what's going on there. And also we could turn it on, so if people are coming in and out of the meeting, like during these COVID times, we have a lot of in and out, they can actually watch on those monitors to see a good opportunity to come in instead of being an interruption to the meeting. So just little things like that. You'll see there's 3 cameras. 2 are kind of focused for you guys, so we can zoom some stuff in. And Ben's gonna turn those on for me right now to keep it easy. I asked him to help me out. So you'll see those on your monitors and behind you. So we're gonna be able to move these around and adjust them because of the way things are spread out right now with the COVID stuff. Yeah, wave at yourself. Right now, they're not being live streamed. The only thing that's live streamed right now is audio. So that's a decision that you guys, we are looking to you guys to make, whether you want to add the video side of things into the live stream or whether you want to keep it just audio only. Today, we went with audio only just until you guys make that decision final. Let's see. And the only other great thing that's kind of included in the room right now is the virtual meetings, Zoom type meetings. We can actually integrate that into the system in here, so it'll work a lot better. It won't be quite as awkward as it is. And then the same thing with the phones. I'm hoping to be able to get rid of the phones and integrate that into the overall system instead of having those sitting there, but that wasn't quite ready yet. So the only other thing I would like to mention is your devices that we've decided on actually shipped over the weekend. So they're coming. Bad news is because of all the remote learning and all the teleworking, they actually ship directly from China. So I have no idea when they're going to get here. There was no resources here in the States to get them to us, so they're coming from China. So they might be here tomorrow. They might be here next month. So, any questions about the system or anything I can answer? Yes, ma'am. Right, yeah. So the iPad or the new devices are really meant for you to be able to work on and look at and touch the screen, Mr. Dickel. So you can do what you need to and take notes and stuff like that with the new devices. These screens that you see in front of them are just static, so the working devices hopefully will be here soon.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Tall? I think Mr. Tall has asked us the question about the video. Any thoughts, comments on that?
I just want to thank you guys for all your work. It looks great.
I think we have technology. Much as I hate to look at myself on the screen, I think it would be an injustice for us not to use it. So
yeah.
I think that's pretty much been the heads I see nodding here. So we're fine with that.
Okay. All right. So every regular meeting from now on, we'll do a live stream of the video too. Okay.
Sounds good.
You didn't see none. You didn't see that. I don't like the views.
Me either. I thought, does this mean I got to sit up straight now?
It matters now. I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly to talk to you a little bit about the Veterans Treatment Court program budget and expenditures. You had been requesting that we provide that information, so Kimberly.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Kimberly Honeycutt. If you would, the last 2 pages of your presentation are the Veterans Treatment Court program budget and activity that you had requested. I want to take a moment just to briefly go over the outline with you, see if that's something that will work, if that gives you the information that you are requesting and would like to see. If there's any changes that you would like made to that, we can do that moving forward. For this presentation, you will actually have 2 pages in your packages. Going forward, it will only be 1 page. So what we tried to do is on page 423 of your presentation is the budget that actually runs from July of 2020 to September of 2020. We were in the end of a grant, and that's when that grant had phased out, and then Harnett County and Sandhills had picked that up. So the format of this document just basically shows the funding that is coming from the BJA grant. Second column is what Harnett County is paying for, and the final column is Sandhills. And normally we group expenses in generalized categories such as materials and supplies, professional services, contracted services. But to help you with this program, we're actually identifying what we're paying on the left side. So hopefully that will be a lot clearer to you. So but if you need to see invoices, that is part of open government public records, so we'll provide those as well. But just to show you, in the first column, we have the budget, total expenses. So for this, on page 423, you'll see total expenses will be for quarters, first 3 quarters, and then the final quarter that report is for, and then the remaining budget. Very self-explanatory, but I do want to point out that we did identify or group them into salaries and fringes, and I'm on the left column, salaries and fringes, and then the items that are considered supplies and equipment, then the treatment areas, and then the travel. And if you would just make a note of under the treatment area, we have Harnett, Cumberland. Cumberland is actually, it's Cumberland County Counseling Services. It is private. It is not Cumberland County Treatment Facilities or the veterans from Cumberland County. That's just the name of that organization. And we'll actually, in your future packages coming up, we will actually try and spell that out so that it will fit. And also under Spring Lake, that is also a private counseling organization. In totality, there was actually $27,616.29 of carryover funds from BJA. And to be able to utilize those moving forward, a modification has to be requested from the grantor, and then they're allowed to carry those funds over. And at this time, we are trying to get a clarification of what that money can be used for. More specifically, if it was left over in travel, do we have to put it back into the travel line, or can we use it elsewhere in other areas under that grant? So that is the last quarter. Your second page, on page 424, it's a lot more difficult to read. Apologize, but we try to maximize what this document gives without trying to put too much on it. You will see the addition of a 4th column, and that is the new BJA grant that you had awarded, or you had approved to be awarded. As again, you will see the first quarter, and then next month we will have a column that shows the prior years or the prior quarters, and then the current quarter that this report is covering. We tried to color coordinate it, tried to separate it a little bit, and that's the best that we could do and still get it on 1 page. I know it's very difficult to see on your monitors, but when you blow it up, it's a lot easier. But it is there's a lot of information going on here, but it does show you what the grantor paid for, what Harnett County is paying for, and then what Sandhills is paying for. And keep in mind that Sandhills only covers those individuals that are in what they determine to be their catchment area. Any questions or comments, suggestions?
Any questions for Ms. Honeycutt? Now, column 4, I believe you said that was the new grant that we approved beginning of this year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so I'm just assuming as I look at this that the changes that we had asked for to be able to utilize that grant for some existing expenses, they were able to get that accomplished?
No, sir, not yet.
Not yet.
So once that's approved, you will see a budget amendment in your packages to reallocate that funding, and then you will see the budget adjusted on this page.
Okay, so what we're seeing, having been allocated so far right now is just all for expansion services, for the most part.
Well, I think, yes, sir.
I would, yeah, as soon as we have word on that, I would like, make sure that you update us on that, please, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments or questions?
This is Commissioner Weatherspoon, under treatment. These are facilities that we're paying to provide treatment to people that come to the Veterans Treatment Court. It doesn't say where these people come from that we're paying for. And that I'd like to, is there a way to include that in their report?
I'm not sure if we can. I'm not sure what the detailed information that we can get. I can reach out to Eric over Veteran Services Director and see what information we can provide. I know that there are certain areas of that information that is protected, so I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to promise what I can and cannot do. Let me take a look with Eric, and I should be able to get something back to you to let you know what we'd be able to provide. But you're just interested in the county that the veteran is from? Is that?
Yeah, under the treatment section.
Okay.
For example, we've got people going to Cumberland. Where are those people that we're paying for? Where are those people from? Are they from Harnett County? They're from Cumberland County? Or are they from Guilford County?
Okay. I'll find out for you.
And this is Commissioner Weatherspoon again. I was under the impression that Lee County had provided some funding for this Veteran Treatment Court, but I don't see it on here anywhere. Was that?
That was in a prior year. This is
okay.
This is for this current year. Yes, sir.
So right now, Lee County is not doing. They're not providing any funding. It's Harnett County and Sand Hills with a one-time funding appropriation. Is that
yes,
correct?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So next year, it'll be Harnett County alone?
This is Brian Haney. Next year, the hope is that Harnett County won't have to provide any funding. The intention is that only the 2 BJA grants will provide funding in the next fiscal year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions or comments for Ms. Honeycutt? Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt. Ms. Stewart?
That's all I have.
Thank you for that information. That brings us to item 10 on the agenda, new business. Is there any new business to come before the body today?
Yes, this is Commissioner Nickel. On Friday, I actually had the privilege of meeting with the Brief Harnett County program. That's the ones that deal with the racial equity in the county. They've done a few presentations before. It was a great presentation that they had given me with a lot of open dialogue. And to be honest with you, there were some things that even I didn't personally realize kind of the full scope of their groups until I listened to their purpose and intent. There's a lot of factors that I don't think we realize that do play a factor and make an impact on our county. I think that this board, it's a new board, maybe if we can sit down with them and have them kind of give us another presentation like the one that I saw, I really think it would put some things in perspective. Education is going to be a big thing, just kind of to realize where we have been as a country and county and kind of where we want to go. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion to add on the next work session that we discuss forming a committee to pursue grants and to address racial equity. we can compose, you know, a group of maybe some healthcare professionals, members in the school board that might help us address some issues, and then some licensed clinical social workers. Maybe we can come up with a plan in order to help out with the racial equity we face here in the county.
So your motion is to put this item on the work session agenda for what's February 9th?
Well, if I may interject, this is Paula Stewart. The work session agenda for February 9th is already full. Is there any way we could push it to February 23rd?
That'd be fine with me. I'd just rather handle this sooner than later and maybe give us a little more time to discuss it.
And I would usually move things around, but we've moved everything we can move, and it's really jam-packed. We'll be here till 1 or 1:30 that day already. So if we add another thing, it would be another retreat day. So that would be great for us if we could push it to the 23rd.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner McCoy. I did not understand or hear what kind of committee you met with. Because I didn't hear that. I want to know what are you talking about?
I had met on Friday with the Breathe Harnett County group. I'm sorry, can you hear me better now?
No.
My apologies. I was away from the microphone. On Friday, I met with the Breathe Harnett County group. They're the ones that are focusing on the racial disparity and racial equity in the county. I was saying how informative their presentation was, and there were a lot of things that even I didn't realize kind of that was going on in full scope. I think the whole board, if we could relook at that and maybe sit down with them, come up with a goal and some plans, to start taking some more steps in the right direction in the future with that, it would be appreciated.
I just want to add that I think it's a great idea, but I want you to be aware that we have met with them. But I'm real pleased that you made the motion to meet with them in our work session. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Nichol. Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Any other comments, questions?
Was the motion for, to put it on the work session the 23rd, was that to meet with them, or was that for us to discuss?
That would be for us as a board to discuss.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, is that something that we really need a motion for, or is that something that Commissioner Nichol can work with Ms. Stewart on getting on the work session?
I noted it, so that's what normally, right, that'd be the normal process, but thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Any other new business? Okay. Hearing none, I believe we have a need to go into closed session. Commissioner Witherspoon?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board go into closed session for the following purposes. One, to instruct the county staff concerning the position to be taken by the county in negotiating a contract for the acquisition of real property. And two, to discuss certain personnel matters. This motion is made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, Section 143-318.11, A5 and 6.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Have a motion to go into closed session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nichol. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned into closed session. Moving.